Okay, we're live. All right. So Evan has worked in the region on natural resource management and compliance for the past 27 years, starting as a regulator at the Corps of Engineers, then moving on to an environmental specialist position coordinating environmental compliance for Corps projects like dam operations, dredging, flood control, and environmental restoration projects. In 2018, he moved to King County to start the Comprehensive Fish Passage Restoration Program to help accelerate the correction of barriers to fish passage. The King County program, I am so sorry. Jake, be quiet, please. The King County program is close to completing a full inventory of county-owned barriers. Andrea is the technical lead for the 2-year effort. She helps manage the data collection for King County's fish passage program. She also helps coordinate their 2-person field teams and provides technical assistance for the data collection. They've been using iPads and iPhones and ArcGIS Collector app to collect and store the data from WDFW fish passage assessments. So Evan's going to speak to the details of the program and how the inventory information plugs into everything else that the program does. And with that, Evan, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to the group today. And so I'm going to run down some general background about fish passage, which I probably is kind of review for most of the group, and then how King County relates to that. And, in 2017, County Executive Constantine initiated an effort to coordinate the work that the county's doing with tribes, cities, state agencies, and other partners to remove barriers that prevent salmon from migrating to healthy habitat. And that kind of led up to my hiring in 2018 to develop a long-term strategy so we could accelerate restoration of fish passage at county fish passage barriers. That said, our focus on our scope has been to look at county barriers, and we know that we can make better decisions if we have as complete information as possible about where the barriers are. And with that complete information, we can work to open up the most habitat efficiently, get a better return for investment, better chance for partnerships so that we can open up more habitat quicker. And, all this work is on behalf of the salmon because they are incredible organisms, but we have to be able to allow them to do what they do best with our help. So let me know if the slides advance.
Hey, Evan, is that Zacchaeus Creek?
That is actually,
Sorry about that.
That is Mary Olson Creek. It's a tributary to the Green River, where the county replaced that culvert that you see in the September 2020 picture this summer. And then just the past fall, a couple months later, there were chum salmon that were moving up through it, spawning in the culvert and moving further upstream.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you.
So where exactly is that creek? That's pretty cool to see the salmon.
It's down in Auburn on the east bank of the river. There's a county park called Mary Olson Farm, and the creek is just literally at the gate of the farm. On the picture of the new culvert, you can see those
maybe a mile north of the golf course, something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's great. We were showing video earlier. That was really cool.
Yeah, I don't know why that stopped. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, super cool to see that. And really, that's what's so rewarding. If we just give the fish an opportunity, they will take advantage of it. They're just waiting to move into the habitat that is available if we can just give them the opportunity. So just kind of moving along, salmon obviously have been a fundamental part of the ecological and cultural foundation for the region since the last ice age, and they've sustained people in the region, and the life cycle of salmon has provided a basis for the formations of the tribal societies around here that were here pre-European settlement, and they're also were a key driver for development of the region when Europeans came in the early 19th century. So King County is salmon country. I think when we think about that in the Puget Sound, the Puget Sound is really a crucial part for salmon. In King County, I think we're fortunate to have a lot of resources, in part because of our economic engine and the population, but we also have a lot of impacts, and that's one of the things that we're trying to remedy. So this is a really broad-based habitat map for what historic salmon distribution used to be. I mean, we're kind of the epicenter of salmon distribution throughout the North Pacific. And we've got 5 of the 6 Pacific salmon species, as well as ocean-going trout and char. Prior to settlement, the salmon populations and the rivers going into Puget Sound were among the largest and most robust anywhere in the range. And that's partly because of our location is really favorable with a diverse river and stream environment. They've got the 3rd largest estuary in the United States in Puget Sound that lead out into very productive ocean environments. And this graphic, you can see, I mean, historically, every area of stream in the county, except above significant natural barriers like Snoqualmie Falls and Sunset Falls, probably had salmon of some sort. And if they didn't have salmon, they probably had some sort of resident trout that contributed to the overall ecological productivity. Now, one of the things that I hope to generate is a map showing the current salmon habitat available to fish in King County. And that's going to show a lot more areas where salmon can't get to due to man-made structures that prevent them from swimming further upstream. And those include all ownerships, public and private owned structures, all contribute to that fragmentation of habitat.
This is historical. This goes back for millennium, right? This map.
Yep, and interestingly, that upper right corner in the Skykomish River, that now actually has salmon in it because of a trap and haul that's been going for decades at Sunset Falls, which was historically the upstream limit of salmon.
And you never got salmon up from the east side into Lake Coachella? Or Coachella, whatever it's called.
This is just King County. So if I did include, the east side, there would be fish up into those areas, definitely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we know that salmon are incredibly tough. They've demonstrated how resilient they are in the face of disturbance. They reoccupied rivers after they were covered with thousands of feet of ice after the last ice age. Since European settlement, we've totally replumbed Lake Washington, Cedar, and Duwamish Green Basis and totally changed where those rivers actually enter the Puget Sound in the early 20th century, and fish have persisted and been sustained. And more recently, for example, after Mount St. Helens and the Toutle River was just a big mud flow for months after that, but fish and salmon recolonized that after that. But the big question is, will they survive us and our kind of long-term chronic impacts to their habitat? So fish passage is not a new concept. Starting in Europe hundreds of years ago, residents observed severe decreases in salmon numbers, and they generally had a good idea of what fish needed to recover. Give them habitat that they can use, and they'll do okay. And this quote is right out of the Magna Carta from year 1215. So it's clear that fish passage has been long acknowledged. Unfortunately, and you guys probably know this, in Europe and the eastern United States, the trend has been that salmon abundance has crashed from pre-exploitation populations almost without exception. And with the exception of salmon originating from kind of the remote parts of the Pacific Basin in northern Asia and North America, we're kind of following the same pattern for our Pacific salmon. And the challenge is for King County and the Puget Sound region is, can we learn from the past to sustain and recover our salmon? Are we just going to repeat the cycle that first happened in Europe and then Britain and then the East Coast of the United States? So at King County, taking action to increase the quality and the amount of good habitat that salmon can use is one of the most important actions that we can take to help salmon. It's good for the ecosystem, and a healthy aquatic environment benefits all of us. It's good for the tribes that have relied on the harvest of fish since time immemorial, and the commitments that the federal government made in the late 19th century in treaties that those tribes would have that resource available to them going forward. And of course, it's good for future generations in the region by sustaining that fundamental part of the county's background and the culture. And I'm firmly convinced that if we just provide salmon access to good habitat, they will do the rest. They've demonstrated that how resilient they are. I mean, they are self-propelled sacks of ocean fertilizer that return ocean nutrients to land. They need good water quality, also important for people, obviously a key factor for orca recovery. And it also in King County, I mean, retaining that unique mix of the Northwest has of urban areas adjacent to high quality, high function natural areas is something that we can build from. So of course, salmon can't tell who owns a passage barrier. This is a picture of our field crew out surveying one of the county barriers. But if that's a private barrier, fish is going to try to get up there, and they want to swim to all potential habitat they can reach. But obviously, they're not getting past a barrier like this. So our goal is to allow fish to swim to all potential habitat without obstruction. Analogy I use is that when we go from our house to the east, someplace in the east side or over the pass, we're not constantly stopping to figure out how we're going to get across streams. It's a smooth trip. We cross countless streams. We want to do the same thing for fish, where they don't notice when they go under a road or a trail. That is something that's transparent for their migration. And to restore the kind of connectivity that really benefits salmon, it requires remedy of all barriers, regardless of who owns them. And that's where you guys come in. We've improved vastly our data on where county barriers are, but we still have a lot of gaps to fill. So this is a map of, I'm just going to go through a series of maps. And this is just a map of northern King County. You can, just to orient you, you can see Lake Washington on the left and Lake Sammamish, the north end of Lake Sammamish in the center lower part. And it kind of focuses on the Bear Creek area, which is the area that we've provided Nick with a list of barriers that would help us greatly. And then we fill in, this is some of the work that our county teams have done over the last 2 years. This represents completed surveys for county crossings, with the green being passable and the other colors being shades of partial barriers to full barriers. And then when we add in, this is adding in the other known barriers from the WDFW database. So, we're filling in, we've got a lot of dots on the map, but this next graph is going to add in, these are barriers that, likely crossings that we have no information on. And there are some really crucial locations where, in the absence of information, we could be making decisions that might not make a whole lot of sense. And I'm going to zero in on this rectangle here in the next map.
The ones that you don't have information on, the black dots, right?
The black dots, yep. And there are more. If we zoomed in, you'd see more pop up. But at this zoom out, they have to be kind of on their own to be able to see them. So that black dot is something that where looks like there's a road or a driveway or something crossing a creek, but there's been no data that's obtained on that. So could be fine. It could be a completely passable, but there's a likelihood that it might not be. And that big circle, kind of oblong ellipse in the middle, that's the main stem Bear Creek. So there's a lot of barriers upstream that we know about, but if those 4 crossings happen to be barriers, those would jump up in priority to try to remedy them and work with the landowners, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to invest in clearing the barriers upstream if fish are going to be blocked here. And then you can see the other kind of clusters or individual barriers in other waterways where those control a fair amount of habitat, and they also may affect decisions on what sequence we may want to do other barriers upstream because of a barrier downstream.
Yeah,
yeah.
Are landowners do landowners have to fix these barriers?
Technically, there's a RCW from 1940 that says that the state can go in and mandate it. That has never been used. So practically, no.
Okay.
But yeah, this is become a burning question. Is it does strike me as that the state ought to have considerable powers in terms of at least being able to go up the stream beds. And the state owns the streams. I guess I am, and you'll probably have a longer discussion about this, about how Trout Unlimited can help in terms of trying to work with property owners. But why not? I mean, I know it's heavy-handed, but I mean, at some point, isn't this going to be, and we're probably way past it, isn't this going to be the point where you say the state's going to walk in and say, I'm sorry, but I'm accessing your stream. You've got a barrier. You're going to have to remove it. And of course, there's a funding question. But I'm really surprised. I guess I want to be educated on why the state can't be more aggressive in accessing points like these.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak for the state. There is some legislation that's coming out of the Orca Task Force that it's proposing to update the 1940s era legislation that really hasn't been effective, and that in talking with the state, I mean, they recognize that they have the right to do certain things, but they also recognize that if they are heavy-handed in that, they will lose that right very quickly. So they're very sensitive to, trying to make it more of an assistance issue than a mandate. And, that won't always work, but that's their first option. And, I think there's enough barriers out there that, we're definitely improved over the last 10 years in kind of filling in the landscape of which crossings are barriers and trying to cover all the crossings, but it's still a work in progress.
So this is Carl Bevis. So these are in the list that you gave Nick, correct?
Yep.
So we're right on the cusp of sending information to these landowners requesting access to do it. So is there some other sort of salient points that we could share with those landowners once we make contact with them? Sort of kind of what you're saying about this being really critical, these areas, or, I mean, certain barriers that you know of are really critical. Should we target those?
Yeah, I think on the list that we gave you, there's a range of different types of barriers, and Andrea, chime in here at any point. Some of those lists, some of the information on there says, is it within potential Chinook habitat? And for example, those 4 on the main stem of Bear Creek would fall within that category. Those I would love to see those done as soon as possible. There are other sites on that list that are really up at the headwaters of really small streams that aren't necessarily even mapped on, so finally, as you see on here, I mean, it would show a dot without a stream that's mapped. Those are lower priority. I mean, that helps fill in the overall, picture, but, not going to have as much of a linchpin effect on decisions on how we proceed in a given basin.
Okay.
Hey, Evan.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify. So your team has been out doing just the county-owned crossings, and you're reaching out for help to do the non-county ones?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Yeah, and non-county or yeah, I mean, I guess that's the best way to say it. I mean, most of them are private, and again, Andrea, chime in, but that's not the only type that is out there.
Right. I mean, on the map we found federally owned and state owned, and obviously county owned and private that we haven't been able to get to yet. That's what Carl's been helping with. Carl and Nick.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just clarifying. Thank you.
We're not sure whether they're going to be federally owned or privately owned, but we just know that these ones that we sent to you are not county owned, and so they're not on the list of our field team to assess right now.
Yeah, I cannot hear you, Andrea.
Oh, at my complete, can you hear me now?
Yes, good.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I was just clarifying that we don't know for sure whether they're going to be privately owned or federally owned, but we just know that the ones that we've sent to you guys are not county owned, so they're not in the inventory that our field team that we have staffed are going out to look at right now.
So this is just a small sample of those that are not in your inventory. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think I'm not sure who it was, if it was Nick or somebody else who reached out to us, they asked for just about 20 for us to share with you
Right.
guys. And right now we're prioritizing this basin particularly. And so that was the list that we sent to you all.
I've been criticized or taken to task for asking too many questions, so I'll try to limit it. But when you put these maps together, are there any maps that show sort of the furthest upstream extent that salmon have been observed spawning? I mean, that would tell us a lot in terms of, you're just looking at Bear Creek, you do all this work and on all these green dot culverts or passage or barriers up the stream, but you don't know whether salmon are actually making it up there to spawn. Is that information we have? And
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is really incomplete, to be honest with you. I mean, we have, obviously on the larger streams, I think we've got pretty good data, but once you get into the smaller stream network, that is not, you'd think it would be, something you could pull off the shelf. That's something on our to-do list for the next couple of years, is to try to nail down actual potential salmon habitat, rather than just by looking at where natural barriers are, and also looking at if there's a good chance that fish actually, in the absence of a man-made barrier, would make it up there and actually use it. But that is barely incomplete, and that's a gap that we're hoping to fill more in the next year or two.
yeah, it just seems like it would be so useful to have information like that if we're out there doing all sorts of barrier assessments, and lo and behold, it turns out, well, you can clear all those barriers all you want, but there's a barrier downstream, or Snoqualmie Falls is downstream, and you're never going to see anything. And to kind of know whether you're actually seeing fish get up that far, it's almost like you've got to think like a fish here and do your assessments by thinking like a fish, and just work your way upstream. And so, I don't know if a lot of work was done on the green ones upstream of those 4 dots, but knowing what those 4 dots are, if those are truly barriers, obviously would tell us a lot, whether we're wasting time, spending money and effort on the upstream dots.
Yeah, I mean, we were basing it on the potential salmon habitat criteria in the WDF manual, so 2 foot wide or bigger, and that's a really small stream. Our crews also, we would work down to upstream, and with the idea that we were looking to see if there was a potential barrier, either stream disappeared or there was a drop that was big enough to break to prevent fish from getting further upstream. But that's still very incomplete. I mean, that would be another, we didn't ask for this, but I mean, assessment of natural barriers is also something that would be very helpful to fill in a data gap. So I guess our guidance to the team is, if you see a drop that out in your travels and you can do a site assessment on that, definitely do it. And if it turns out to be a full barrier, then we kind of moved on. We didn't move further upstream.
Is that something, and this is, I guess, to Brad, that we would implement in the program? We kind of assess barriers based upon there being a culvert, but assessing barriers based upon there being, a significant drop off is pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't know if you remember from the training, but we sort of glossed over the non-culvert barrier part of the training, just because we were trying to concentrate on culverts at that time. But we definitely have the materials, and we could definitely do that kind of assessment if we chose to. We just you just can't train for everything, when you train for the first time, right? We just want to get people trained and get people out in the field working.
Thanks.
So I see Penny's chat. This is actually the end of my presentation, so we're good. The discussion is great.
Yeah, I'll touch on that real quick, Andrew. Also, if we want to start doing natural barriers, that's something we can definitely look at doing. We would just have to make sure that the trainers are trained to do that, because we never received training on how to do the natural barrier assessments. So once we do that, we could develop a training course for everyone to go through to do that.
And you'll see on the WDFW web map, they have a layer for natural barriers. Most of those have not been field verified, and so that was another task that, if our team was in an area where there was a natural barrier noted, that's based on a old stream database. They would go check it out to see if that might be a natural barrier, and in most cases it wasn't.
And Nick, that might be a good question for Luke. I would guess that he has probably done those kind of assessments with all the work he's done over on the OP. So he might be a good resource for that.
Yep, I'll reach out to him and we'll work on it.
Yeah, the thresholds to call a natural barrier are much higher than what the thresholds for a culvert. Like the water surface drop is giant compared to a falls is much higher. And Andrea might know off the top of her head, but then, the foot or more for a culvert.
60 meters or something. It's pretty high.
It's come again, Andrea.
Oh, sorry. I think it was 160 meters or something, but it's pretty.
Yeah, 106. What, 16% for 160 meters?
Yeah.
So, you can have something that's really steep, not necessarily vertical, but, say 20% for, 50 meters. That doesn't meet the criteria for natural barrier, even though that's a challenge for a salmon to make up. Maybe if it's a big enough stream, a steelhead would do it, but, it's going to look pretty much like a falls.
Well, and I think there'd be a lot of other factors, like how much water and there could be some natural chutes within the falls, that they can get up. Yep. There's all kinds of things that would make it much more difficult to assess than just a culvert, right?
Reading the tea leaves here, it does seem like Trout Unlimited could help a lot if we could get access to and assess the barriers on privately owned properties. I'm wondering, Evan, if you could speak to sort of the things that are going to scare the private landowners if we come and say we're here to help, and what are the things that we can say that will maybe help them, grant access and work with us.
So I guess what I've heard from our field team members is a lot of times people are just wondering what that's going to mean to like the land use that they can use to their properties. Yeah, and I think as Penny mentioned too, saying that you're not from the government, we'll do a lot to help you gain access to people's properties, just because I think they're more likely to work with you because they're not afraid of, the government coming in and permitting anything that they're doing, or any type of that type of work. And I think also like you're not stream typing the stream either, because I think when they think about people looking at the streams, they're afraid that it is going to become a protected wetland or something, and it's going to impact their ability to do things on their land. I can check back with the team and see some of the questions and ways that they've been able to talk to landowners and send an email out to you guys with more information on that for sure.
Well, I think the obvious question that they're going to be asking themselves is, this is going to cost me some money because I've got a barrier, a weir, or whatever. Is there, are there resources that the state has or the county has to help
Andrew, I
private
can touch on
owners?
that. We actually have developed, and I'm going to go over this at the end of our presentation. We have a web page that we've built for landowners specifically. After we send them a postcard asking to survey their land, and it's full of FAQs, basically asking all of that stuff with the resources that they can get funding wise and things like that. So we'll be going over that at the end of the presentation. But we have lots of information for them, and that's what we've been working on the last couple months, trying to put together to make sure we're ready before we send everyone out into the field. And that way everyone can know the answers to those questions.
Great. I told you I'd ask annoying questions.
Yeah, there are resources. I think, as with all of salmon recovery, it'd be great if there was more than enough, but at this point there isn't. But there definitely are resources to provide grants and whatnot and to help. And there's organizations like yours. There's salmon recovery groups. There's the water resource inventory areas, lead entities that can help with technical assistance as well. And, I don't know, this is not a promise, but for example, the county has a project above the falls, actually, where there's a revetment right where the South Fork of the Snoqualmie meets the Middle Fork, and the revetment needs repair, and there's a culvert that comes through there that's got very little habitat upstream, but it is a barrier, and the county needs to basically move around the outlet to do the bank work. And we are negotiating with WDFW to actually remedy a barrier that's on Brockway Creek, which is a much bigger water body that is a private barrier. So that's another thing that we're investigating is, maybe there's an option for even the county to maybe kind of compensate for some impacts by maybe working at a private barrier. And if we don't know that barrier's there, that's not an option for us to consider.
So in terms of remedying these situations, like these are all small relative to state highways and all that kind of stuff. I mean, is there a limiting factor with funding or like available contractors and the engineering resources to kind of look at pulling out these culverts and putting in little spans and that kind of thing? I've often wondered that because you hear, there's a lot of money out there and there's a lot of need, and how you could kind of get everything to match up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a funding issue in general. And one of the things that is advantageous about these private roads, like those unknown crossings on Bear Creek, if that is a private road that's like a 2-lane or even a 1-lane road, and that's a lot simpler to remedy than a 4-lane county road like Avondale Road. So those are things that would be kind of the low-hanging fruit, and I think particularly given that it's blocking a lot of habitat, we would want to work with them to try to figure out a way to get them get that working for them so they maintain access, and it probably it's more resilient to future flows and provides fish the ability to get past it. Another example is there was a washout on North Fork, New Wacom Creek near Enumclaw. And this county has a program called the Neighborhood Drainage Assistant Program that is partnering with them to essentially pay for the replacement of that washout. So those are just examples of options that are out there. It's not like it's automatic, but there are options to deal with these types of non-public crossings.
So is the expectation for these private landowners to kind of be the project manager for all of that remediation, or?
It depends on the partnership, I think. If for example, if a salmon recovery group was involved, they probably would take on that role. But if the landowner feels like they want to take that role on, they probably could take that role on as well.
So with the first stage is get the assessment done and see how bad things really are.
Yeah, and that helps kind of scope out what it would take to replace. There's a lot of, on, for example, a stream the size of Bear Creek, there's a lot of difference between something that is in a 40-foot deep ravine and something that is in a much shallower crossing. And so, those are important things to consider when you're trying to figure out what would it take to correct the barrier.
So like when we're finished, or say we do these assessments and then, so you would come into the mix there and look at what we find, or would it go into the WDFW world?
It would go into WDFW world. The way we would interface with it is that we would plug that into our prioritization tool, so that we are looking at what that means in terms of effect on priority on basins on the same system, or barriers on the same system.
Okay. So time's the iron's hot. Now is the time, right?
Yeah.
Well, our plan is we're going to start sending out postcards, I believe next week.
Great.
I think we printed out about 20 that we're going to start out with, just to make sure that they look good, and we'll send them out and see if we get people to hear back, to send us back times to schedule surveys, and we'll go from there.
I'm holding one up in front of the camera if you can see it.
Your camera's off, Carl.
Oh.
There we go. Yeah, and I'll show the postcards. I have a PDF that I'm going to show in a second too. So.
Yeah, I can stop presenting too.
Okay.
Let's see. Is that gone now? Did I do it?
Yep, you're good.
Okay.
Before I start doing my part of the presentation, does anyone have any more questions for Evan or Andrea?
I was curious to know, because glad to see Andrea involved. She's looks like a younger participant, and I was curious what her background and role is.
Yeah, so I have a background in environmental engineering, and I joined King County at the end of 2018 to help kind of lead and coordinate our field teams that are going out there and doing the assessments as well. So I'm providing support to Evan for some program management, and then also coordinating our field teams that are out doing the assessments.
Great.
Yeah.
So how many people do you have doing assessments?
So we have 2 teams of 2 going out there and doing the assessments, and they've been out there for about 2 years now doing the assessments, and they've gone to over 3,000 different sites. That's not to say that they've done 3,000 assessments. Sometimes they'll go to a location that we've identified, and they'll find that there's not necessarily a culvert there. It's just where we have a stream mapped crossing a road or crossing a trail, but then they'll identify that there's not actually a culvert. So that's some of what our team has been finding. But yeah, they've been out there day in and day out for 2 years now.
Awesome. Anything else, anyone, or are you ready for my boring presentation? I tried to make it not boring this time. Okay, Evan and Andrea, you're welcome to stay. Probably going to be another 20 minutes, but if you guys have families or anything else you got to go work on, you're more than welcome to head out. But thank you for being here and presenting.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And, as you have questions, certainly ask. I mean, we recognize that, you're going to run into things that maybe don't fit neatly within your training. And, with 3,000 sites under the team's belt, they've come across a lot of things. They're still asking questions. I mean, there's some weird things in streams out there.
Andrea, I'll make sure I send you lots of emails.
Yeah, definitely. We have a complex site protocol.
Perfect.
We work on.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get my thing started here. All right, can you guys all see my PowerPoint here?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So, also again, I'm dog sitting for those of you that didn't hear. So the dog is currently barking a lot and wanting to play ball. So you might hear him scrambling around. Okay.
Dog doesn't disturb us, but might be too loud for you, but it's fine with us.
Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to talk about is we have a bat logo that a lot of work has gone into, and this is what it looks like. You'll start seeing it incorporated throughout our website and also on a lot of the equipment that we're getting, or I guess you could say logo wear. So big thanks to Luis for that. We sent out an order form recently for you guys to place your orders for our t-shirts. Our t-shirts are going to have the general Washington Trout Unlimited logo on the front. And our barrier assessment team, they call this the sunset logo because it kind of looks like a sunset a little bit. That'll be on the back. The whole point of getting logo wear is so that when we go do these private property assessments, we look uniform and that we look like we're actually supposed to be there and not that we're like just throwing on a hard hat and I have a clipboard and we're going to steal all their stuff. We want to look uniform and like we know what we're doing. So having shirts and other things like that are going to make us look a lot more approachable and official. So if you haven't placed your order, I think Lynn has been tracking people down, and I think we're at the point where he might start calling people if you haven't placed your order yet. We can't place the order until we get everyone to put their info in. So you're holding up shirts from your fellow volunteers if you haven't done it yet.
Is there any chance of? Oh, never mind. You just
Nope.
answered my question.
Nope.
The next screen.
Yep. So there's more stuff that we have that we're going to order than this. But as you can imagine, we wear our reflective vest a lot, so those shirts are going to be covered up. We are ordering reflective vest with if the logo is going to be bigger than this. This is just a sample with our bat logo on the back of it. We're going to have hats that we're ordering, so everyone's going to get a hat. We're going to keep the reflective vest in our bat kits, so there'll be 2 or 3 in each kit. Once you hit 10 assessments, I think our plan is we're going to give you a reward by giving you your own reflective vest with a bat logo on the back. So if you start getting out there and doing more culvert assessments, your reward is you get a really cool reflective vest that I'm jealous of. We have other things in the works, like we have some like survey signs. So drive carefully, survey crew ahead. It's not a massive sign. It's Lynn might be able to talk about how big it is, but it's probably about 1.5 by 1.5 feet or something like that. And it can go in the ground, or we can tape it onto like our laser level. That way people just are a little bit safer around us and we're not getting hit by cars. When we're on private property, not as big of a deal because, we're probably on a driveway or something like that. But there's that. We also are working on getting some certificates so you guys can all be official. I know for me, a lot of this is I'm trying to build my resume so I can get into the environmental field. So having certificates helps me build my resume and my toolkit. I don't know about any of you, but if you're looking for a certificate, we can make that happen. And we're also working on things like ID badges and things like that, which we'll be talking about at a later date once we kind of figure out the logistics of that. Okay, so there's a couple new things that we have on our website. The first is we now have a way to reserve assessment kits. I'm going to throw the ball real quick for the dog. he's whining. So on our website, you've probably seen our long list of tabs that we have for, barrier map, videos, training, things like that. There is now the reserve kit section, and on that, and you know what, I'm just gonna go to it. That way you guys can see it. I had this whole thing all planned out to make it look pretty on PowerPoint, but it'll be easier just to show you. So give me 1 second. Go here, tab, and here. Okay. So here's our website. First thing I'll point out, we have this little section here that says receive a postcard from us. Click here. We're going to go over that next, but that's where our landowners would go if they've received a postcard from us. But going down to our little tab section, we have our reserve kits. We've divided Washington State up into 5 regions. The idea is that we are going to have one kit in every single region as the program grows. The plan is we're going to have at least 2 more kits coming, so we'll have 7 total. So we might put a couple more in the South Central Puget Sound region where most of our volunteers are. Currently, we have kits in Edmonds, North Bend, Sammamish, Seattle, and Kitsap County. And on this map, this calendar here, you'll see whether or not a kit has been checked out. It'll be color-coded so you know what kit is checked out, and it'll also be in the name of it'll say like Niculatia, and it'll say OP, which means I've checked out the OP kit for a certain amount of days. That's just a way so that you guys can know, be like, hey, Nick's going out and doing surveys during this week. Maybe I'll call him and see if I can go survey with him. We want you guys to get out, to get to know each other and all that stuff. So this brings up, how are you going to actually reserve the kits? That's what this nice big blue button here, the kit reservation form. You're going to click on it. It'll take you to a new page here, which it's not showing you because it went to a different thing. 1 second. I love Google, but at the same time, I don't always like it. Okay, here we go. So here's that map again. This just opened up a new page for us. You're going to fill out your information, so I'm going to autofill it all in. So first, last name, email, phone number, and then this is the big one. This is your kit location that you're trying to check out. We want you to pick the one that's closest to you. That way people that are further away are able to get ones near them. So if I were to pick the Edmonds kit, I believe Jim Black is the one that has that. And what happens is when you submit this form, I am going to get an email, and whoever the kit owner or whoever has the kit is going to get the email. And that's going to tell them to reach out to you to set up a time to pick up the kit, drop it off, etc. And it'll just let them know that you want the kit, basically. You'll pick the date range that you want the kit. So March 11th to March 19th. That's a pretty long time frame. We just want about a week. That way other people have access to it. And then agree to the waiver. The waiver basically says you're only going to use the kit for bat-related stuff. Please don't take the rangefinder to the golf course to find out how far you can hit the golf ball. And that you're going to survey with at least one other person, and that you're going to let your kit coordinator know if any equipment has been damaged, lost, or needs repair. Last thing you have to do, really fun, you have to do your signature. You can do whatever you want. Then hit I'm not a robot and submit. Make sure I filled everything out. If you don't fill everything out, it'll let you know and you'll have to correct it. But I'm going to submit it, and you'll get a confirmation saying thanks for submitting a bat kit reservation. And I believe you get an email as well. So that's kind of a good way of knowing. And then your kit coordinator will reach out to you and let you know what the next steps are. Any questions on that? I know I kind of breezed through it.
So this might be a really obvious question, Nick, but Carl and I are going to go do assessments on Thursday. So I'm assuming Carl probably should reserve his own kit for Thursday, so it's not available.
So the big thing is if a kit coordinator is taking out the kit, we don't necessarily need you to reserve it. But it's the big thing is if someone else is taking out the kit, we need to keep track of who has it, and the kit coordinator needs to keep track of who has it because it's really expensive. We don't want to lose them, and we want to be very accountable with it. So if you're going out with one of the kit coordinators, you don't need to fill it out.
Well, I was just thinking if just the one, like you said, is keep track of it. But two, you also pointed out just letting people know that it's somebody's going to be out at that time doing assessments. So
yeah, you know what? That's actually a great idea. Let's do that. Kit coordinators, fill out your own reservation form. That way I know and I'll update the calendar.
Sorry, Carl. Didn't mean to give you more work, but you know.
Yeah, it's just submitting a form. I'm the one that has to do the calendar entry. I have to pay attention.
Well, maybe Scott, you should check it out, and I'll bring it to you Thursday.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, it'll be good practice. Okay. Jake, I know you want to play ball, but I'm busy. Okay. Any other questions on the reservation form? Outstanding. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over is I'm going to show you guys our postcard real quick. Let me go here. And I want to do a window. I know, Jake. Okay. So this is what our postcard looks like. This is the front of it. We tried to make it very short, very sweet, easy to read, and hopefully grab their attention a little bit so they actually read it and don't just think it's trash and throw it away. The big thing is to note is we do have a spot on here where we can actually write in the site, the WDFW site ID for their culvert. So if for some reason they want to look it up, they can do that. But it also makes it easy for us when they contact us saying, hey, we got your postcard. We can actually ask them, all right, what's the site ID on there? And then it's easy for us to look it up and provide them information on their culvert. We have a general BAT email now. It's bat@washingtontu.org. That's going to several of us, so we'll be able to answer the emails quickly. Carl is actually going to be handling all the private property emails. Jake, please be quiet. And so he'll be kind of dealing with most of that, but we have redundancy by having a couple people monitoring that email in case there's any other emails that come in. This is what the front looks like. We have our return address, and then we'll just, Jake, we're going to get locked in a room. We'll put a label with the address of the private property owner on there. Another great example of what our logo looks like here.
Hey, Penny had a great question about non-English speaking landowners.
Oh, what was the question? I can't see the chat. Just what?
Well,
that's a great question. We haven't thought of that, and also we wouldn't know if that was the case until after we send it to them. They might call us and we might realize that there's a language barrier, but when we're just sending the postcards, we really just have a name and an address most of the time. So I'm hoping that they'd contact us and we'd be able to work out some way of communication. I use a translator when I'm at work a lot because I'm going to restaurants and doing food inspections all the time. Jake? But there's other options that we can look into, and I'm sure Andrea might have come across that a little bit, so we'll see if we can maybe chat about that. Although I know they're not doing a lot of private property stuff, but we'll see what we can do. So that's a good question.
Hey Nick, just a quick comment is on this page you're on. Go back to where it says receive a postcard.
Oh, on the website?
Yeah, you just had that page up.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second.
It's slide 9.
Oh, okay. The slide. Sorry.
Just a comment. When I first read that, I would suggest you say received rather than receive, because I read that thinking, oh, that means that if I click that out, you guys are going to send me a postcard.
Yeah, I actually had that originally. Some editing had been done, not by me, and I think it got changed. So I will make that change back. Thank you.
It seems ambiguous.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So I can make that change. So again, this is our landowner information page, and I'm going to go ahead and just take us over there onto the website, so that way we can kind of navigate through it together. I think it's pretty cool that we did it, and I'm excited about it. Let me get 1 second. Oh, come on. Tab. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to scroll on up. So like I said, if you go to our BAT website, come down here and click here for the received a postcard from us. This is what it looks like at first. It's very obvious that this is information for landowners. As we scroll down, this is still very much under development. I just made it this past weekend up at my cabin, and I didn't really have the best Wi-Fi to do intense website editing. Jake, please be quiet. So what we're working on right now, first off, is a video. It's going to be a short elevator speech. I have some video from DNR that they sent me from their Family Forest Fish Passage Program video. I'll be putting that in there along with some other information from Luke and I, just talking about what we do basically, so that way the landowners can have a quick idea of what they might be getting into if they decide to do a survey with us. There's going to be a section for information about partners and how they can help them, the landowners. And then I had a lot of fun making this because I didn't think I'd be able to make it a cool FAQ section, but I was able to. We have this FAQ section with lots of information, answering just about every question we could think of. There's obviously going to be more. Lynn is the one who's kind of managing the FAQs, so as they get updated, he'll let me know, and I'll update them in our on this website. But we already have a couple suggestions from another member and a different chapter, so we're going to be putting those into effect soon by making these more yes and no answers and things like that. But there's lots of information on here, so I highly suggest you guys go and look at it, become familiar with the information, and then email me and ask questions when you have them, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you about them. I'm sorry about the dog. He just wants to play. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure I don't have anything else. Jake, go outside. Does anyone have questions about this website? Nope. Okay, cool. So the last thing I want to go over, I know it's 8 o'clock. Just going to be really quick. It's just some basic rules. We're going to be going over a lot more information in regards to what we're going to be doing when we're doing these private surveys, but I just want to kind of get you guys thinking. Can you guys see the PowerPoint again?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't even know what you guys can see half the time. Okay, so how it works is basically we're going to receive private property requests from agencies such as King County or the state or something like that, and they'll send us a list of culverts that they want us to survey. We're going to send out a postcard to the landowners of those sites. It can be a little tedious trying to get the addresses and things like that, but Carl's developed a great way of doing that. We'll send those postcards out. Hopefully they'll contact us back saying, hey, let's set up a survey time. And then we'll send out a crew, conduct a survey, and then report the results. The big thing is actually getting the landowners to want to consent to us having us come onto their property and doing those surveys. So that's one hurdle we might have to fight, and that's why we're only sending out 20 or 30 in our first batch to see how it works and to see if there's anything else we can do better.
Nick?
Yeah.
Question. If we're out surveying and we happen to run into some private property, do you want to follow a particular protocol of approaching the landowner, or is it okay if I go up and knock on their door and say, hey, can I look at your property?
I think that's something that Brad and Steve and I will have to talk about. I think if a landowner comes up and approaches you and says, hey, what are you guys doing? And you explain and like, oh, well, I have a couple culverts. Do you want to survey mine? By all means, that's totally fine. I think we really want to make sure we're giving these people warning and not just like going and cold calling them. and showing up on their doorsteps and either putting them in an uncomfortable situation or you in a dangerous situation. But it's something we can definitely talk about. A lot of the time, sometimes those culverts are hard to find, but you might get lucky and they might just come out and be like, "What are you guys doing?" and invite you onto their property. I know a couple of our surveyors have already had that happen a few times. So, but we can talk about that. The big thing is we have to have permission from the landowner to conduct a survey on private property. Use your best judgment in regards to safety. I work for a county. I work for Kitsap County, and we have people that go and do septic system inspections, and they're really only allowed to walk to that front door, like straight line or the easiest path to the front door. Don't go walking around the side of the house to see if you can see anyone at the back door or anything like that. And then, use your best judgment. If you see multiple trespass signs, most of our county staff don't go on that property if they see like more than 2 no trespass signs, because chances are that person is not going to want you there. Jake? The landowner doesn't have to be present during the survey so long as you have received permission from them to do the survey. If at any point they decide they don't want to do the survey or continue doing the survey, and they say, "Hey, it's time for you to leave," just leave. Don't put up a fight. It's their property, so we're lucky that they even let us on their property. So, and then the big thing is a lot of these culverts you find might be unregistered culverts, meaning that they don't have a WDFW site ID. If that's the case, do the survey. That you might go for one culvert and find there's 3 more. Do all the surveys and then let me know, and I have a list of site IDs from WDFW that I can assign you. They're unregistered ones, so that way you're basically creating new ones, and that's great. That helps all the agencies out a lot. We're going to keep a copy of our insurance policy and all of our clipboards. One thing that got brought up in our private property sessions was, landowners might worry about whether or not they're liable if we get hurt. We're covered by TU insurance as volunteers. So you don't need to go flaunting around our insurance policy. Just keep it in the clipboard if someone asks to look at it. And we'll also keep copies of the FAQs in there. That way you guys can answer questions in the field if you forget some of them.
Hey, Nick, just on that point, not to get sort of hyper technical lawyer on you, but I am a lawyer. So there is, we could, I was just looking at the Washington State Recreational Use Statute, which provides some level of protection for landowners. The language of the statute said that private landowners in possession and control of lands, et cetera, or channels and lands adjacent to such areas, who offer or allow such land to be used for purposes of fish or wildlife cooperative project, shall not be liable for unintentional injuries to any volunteer group or any other users. I wonder if we would want to somehow incorporate that into the FAQs or into the postcards, as giving them some level of protection that pretty much says, and the statute pretty much says, if you allow people on your land for these kinds of purposes without charging them, then you are not liable for unintentional injuries. It doesn't protect them completely, but it probably gives them at least some level of comfort.
Yeah, definitely. So that's actually one of the things that we looked at, that one specifically. After a lot of talking, we decided to go kind of more low profile on legalese stuff on the website, just to avoid bringing up the questions of legal stuff altogether. But having that information available upon request if needed. But it's definitely something that we can talk about to see if we need to develop that more or add more information on the website in the future. But thanks for bringing that up. That thing is perfect. That's all I have. Any other questions? There's going to be more information coming out in the future about how we're going to be doing these private property surveys. Basically, once Carl starts getting word back from the landowners of whether or not they want us to do surveys, we'll start putting it out there and say, hey, we have a culvert here that needs to be surveyed. Ideally, we'd like to, the person will give us dates and times, and we'll just say it needs to be surveyed at this day and time. Who can go out and do it? So it's a little more time sensitive. So we'd love to get some of you that haven't done surveys yet to get out there and work on those too.
Yeah, no, Carl here. So the one, it's just kind of a detail. It's like, okay, if somebody doesn't respond, we got to sort of talk about, okay, what's the, send them another postcard, 2 weeks later, or however that would go, because you don't know if they just tossed it,
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that goes after the
Yeah,
first
right.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone got anything else? I am going to post a video on how to reserve a bat kit on our YouTube channel. I already have it recorded, but like I said, I didn't have great Wi-Fi at my cabin, so it said it would take 13 hours to upload to YouTube. So I decided to not upload it. So I'll be working on that this week in case you guys need any assistance checking out a bat kit. Okay, if there's no other questions, again, Evan, Andrea, thank you for your time. You're always welcome to come out and do surveys with us or send us more culverts that need surveying.
Yeah, thank you, Evan and Andrea.
thank
So
you so much.
I guess the comment is we'll probably, the questions we have for you will go through Nick. That's probably more realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Send them if you have questions for them. Send them to me, and I'll get it to them. That way, we're not
'cause
spamming them.
You're the contact over there.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, see ya.